I can't hear you.
How about now?
Oh, what's up?
What it do?
Welcome to our Laguna Zuni podcasts. We have no followers at the moment,
It's on private.
but we are broadcasting live from Tucson, Arizona.
Zuni.
Yeah. So thanks for joining today, Kia. Just kidding.
Thanks for having me today, Mandy. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so one of my mentors mentioned that I should have a video log of how I'm processing this and how others are processing this. And I thought it'd be great to have you on the show today to hear how you're processing this because we're going through some weird times and we were just both watching zoo videos that were from San Diego Zoo, the live cam. So we're spending our time in different ways. Um, but like how, so Kia, like describe to me how you're processing all of this. Like describe to me your environment and like what is it like to be a college student right now?
Um, it's hard to be a college student. I just sent an email to all my professors saying like how hard it is right now because I went from Flagstaff, Arizona, having an apartment with Wi-Fi, having school with Wi-Fi, all accessible 24/7, no problem, to going to Zuni, New Mexico, which is a Indian reservation in New Mexico, and we have spotty cellular service and internet service that goes in and out that we pay for, and it's not always accessible online, which is the first one. Second problem is that or I'm going back home or while I'm home, which means that there's added responsibility. Like I don't have that luxury of going to the library, focusing on my work. I have things that I need to take care of, like my grandparents, my little sister, or any other family duties that come. It's usually comes first rather than school, which is a problem because I don't have time to work on things like my capstone paper or research, and which is really hard because I'm in my final semester, and that's what I need to wrap up my education. Along with like the added precautions set by like the state, federal, local governments of staying inside or not going to stores, which is also a problem because we are a remote community, or we have to go at least 45 minutes to our nearest Walmart to get supplies. And then our local store here in Zuni is not necessarily affordable sometimes because of the prices, and just being on the reservation, it usually it's added costs to rather than going 45 minutes for it being a lot cheaper prices. So it's hard adjusting to this, but it's where we have to work it out because we need to continue our education and learn in some sort of way. So it's all of the emotions, but it's good because we have support, like you, Mandy, have awesome support who keep pushing for continue the education process.
Yeah, we've been talking every day, I think, in some capacity, whether it's
Yeah.
text or social media or a phone call or Zoom. So it's been good to process this with you, I think, just to kind of hear how your experience is and just hearing how COVID-19 is hitting the Pueblo communities. So how do you process, like, I know your governor had sent out information recently about a COVID case in Zuni. So like, how did you feel when you heard that? And like, how does your community feel as this COVID-19 spreads across Indian country?
So we had our first case, I think it was like 2 days ago, yesterday. Time just goes out the window during this quarantine. But there's precautions set for the tribe where I think there's like a stay at home place in order as well. They're not letting visitors inside the community, or well, They have signs that say no visitors in the community, but people still come through. And with one of the first cases being here, we're wondering how that entered Zuni, and like how we go about that as a community. But then it also brings certain challenges to our community, specifically because um, we still have our like ceremonial religious things that are going on that don't involve social distancing. For example, like our dances with our kachinas, they happen in the plaza where there's easily 60 plus people at a time on, and very tight spaces or close together. And that's where it comes into the question of like who we actually listen to, why we're listening to them, and how that's going to affect us. I thought that would play into the role of the tribal government working with our traditional government, but it seems like that's maybe not the case. And so as individuals in the community, we have to respond to that and like, okay, well, if that's not working, how are we going to interpret it as individuals, as families, and how do we go about this as a um, like as within our families and in our community, and how we can like implement social distancing when we go to events like that involve 5, 10 plus people, and how do we relay that to people like, oh, usually we greet each other, we have like a hug or a handshake, and now that's like personally when I greet people, that's what I do. And now when I do see other people at the store, I just be like, hey, how are you doing? Like it's hard not following our norms, but then again at the same time we have to take those precautions because I live with my grandparents who are at risk for like the higher risk population of COVID-19, and we have a newborn in our family too. So we just want to look out for the people we love in our life and make sure that they don't come into contact with this. And we've talked about this within our family too, about like the precautions we're taking and the steps. And there's been stories that have been surfaced, like with the diseases that came through our community, um, and the lessons learned, like with my grandpa, he was telling me about the time where one of his grandmothers were born, and she said during during measles. And so it was described as like everybody like dropping dead, the English translation, and like how it was a scary time, how there isn't a lot, but they made do with it. And so she got to live to tell that story of how she was, or how when she was born. And so it's just like a continuation of how we can be resilient through that time. And we've also gone back to that story of our core maidens, where if the tribe was going to close the borders, or like if they're going to put up those signs, we're not accepting visitors too, was another big one. Because with our core maiden story, it was representative of always letting people into our community and welcoming them with open arms, being there to um, like accept them and welcome into the community with food and with good manners. But since the COVID-19 has come in, there's that debate. If we do close Zuni, we're not welcoming people within open arms. And when we didn't do that with that story specifically, we were burdened, or we were faced with like drought, um, no crops, and we had to go through a hard time in order to learn a tree proper. Can you hear me? The
It
internet
was kind of
unstable.
going, all I heard was heart. So go back to the harvest part. This is in real time, Zuni internet connection.
I know it's not cheap.
It's all good. It's all good. You're talking about the harvest, how it impacts your harvest and can impact your community if you close a pueblo. We need a commercial break right now. Okay, you're frozen, but this is okay. This is real life. In Zuni, New Mexico, the internet connection is challenging at times.
I was like, oh no, my
Yeah.
internet,
Okay, I hear you. It's okay. We'll work,
man,
we'll work through this. It sounds robotic, but we'll work
frozen.
through this. Your face is frozen. Okay, I have an idea. How about you log out and then log back in? Try that. Okay. Yes, we're back.
Oh man. I was like, oh no. And then it just like went off screen. I was like, let me try to get it back.
Real life people or people, this is like real life here on Zuni Res, the connectivity. And he is a graduating senior, so you can imagine how challenging it can be.
The frustration. I woke up this morning for my 8 a.m. or well technically 9 in New Mexico. And I was like trying to log on and I was like I like it wasn't working. Then I tried using my hotspot. I was like, there's no way I'm gonna make it to this meeting. And then so I was just like, you know what, I'll try in 30 minutes. But it wasn't working in 30 minutes. And I was just like, who's on the internet? I was like, nobody's awake. I don't know who's awake right now. I was like, maybe it's just like the wind or what. It's because it's pretty windy outside too.
Oh, dang. Oh man, I know we talked about all kinds of stuff. Like, how are you processing when you hear different COVID cases on different tribal nations beyond your nation?
Like I get scared because usually at least or well like in the pueblos I at least know one person from each pueblo or like they describe like the stories or the elders that they have and I get scared because I'm just like, what if like that hits home for them or it hits home for us? And like, how do we deal with that? Because I've seen a lot of things on like social media where like healthcare provider professionals are like stay home and they share their experiences and um like there was this one where it's like stay home because everybody who catches COVID and if they do pass away from COVID, like they will die alone. And in our traditional ways, like that's not how you go. Like you are not allowed to do that at all. But at the sake of everybody's health, like that's maybe the new reality we have to face. You would go alone and how like
Mm.
you'd be like my grandma, she attended a funeral last night and like there was things that were brought up like and I talked to her like, oh, why are you gonna go because like we have a case in Zuni and are you gonna practice social distancing and what does that look like, because they had to go into the hospital, they were like given masks too just to like for that precaution, like and what happens if like they have to take care of those things once they like pass on or like that's the type of conversations
Mm.
we'll have now, because like it's now in our community and we're just trying to limit the cases we do have and now I and seeing the other nations go through that like their numbers rising and people not listening either, it's just like please listen, like it's getting scary, it's we're all worried, but at the same time we have our beliefs on our like cultural practices that help us get through this time and like stay strong and pray that it doesn't get any worse or it doesn't hit home, but still at the same time having those conversations of like facing our new reality and how we'd get through this time together as communities and us like within our um tribal nations.
Mm. I never even thought about that, like what that means. One of my sisters was talking to me about how, like in the Phoenix area, like she basically described what you described. Like if somebody has COVID-19, then it's like they immediately take them away. Like no family or like anybody can like interact with this person. And then if they were to die, like you can't see them until after this kind of has passed. And so I think it's really like in my stomach I feel like, or in my throat I feel like a tightness, I think, because when I think about that, like you talk about our new reality, that's something that in our lifetime at least that, you know, like we've seen things a certain way or protocols or just like how the community should respond to different things like deaths or funerals, you know, but I didn't even think about that.
Mm-hmm.
When I hear different cases on tribal nations, like I think it my response is similar to like I just it makes me worry like Santa Vera district, which is here in Tucson, they just had a case yesterday, and Santa Vera is like a pueblo too, really small community, and then Gila River had another positive case yesterday over up in Phoenix, and then Navajo Nation we had heard, gosh, today it was like 170 plus or something, or
It's
190.
like 214.
Oh my gosh, I remember when it was like 115. I remember when they had the first two
Mm,
cases up in
yeah,
what was it, Kayanta,
yeah,
and then
and
then they had
Chinchibu.
7. Yeah, and then now, oh my gosh, I didn't realize it was that high.
Yeah, and I think where I got like really like it really hit me that like it's impacting our communities is that first case or like those two first cases on the Navajo Nation. Um, our Miss Indigenous NAU Alicia Sisna
Mm,
Genie,
mm-hmm,
that was one of her family members,
mm,
and her uncle like during that time spring break, he had passed away, and she like told me that, and I was like, dang, she was like really concerned because with it was one of her family members who got COVID and tested
mm,
positive, and so she was also worried that her uncle who passed away would passed away from COVID, and
mm,
they tested him and he was positive. So that's like one of the things like she was like really really concerned about, like if she had it, because her family sent her back to Flagstaff to finish her school
mm, mm-hmm,
because she doesn't have access to internet um back home, and she was like really scared, like what if I do have COVID or whatever. And
mm-hmm,
like, and she's also in that process of like processing and like grieving her uncle as well, like with this disease, this new disease that's coming. and and it's just like I really hit because I'm like, I don't necessarily know what to say, like how it could happen, but I was just told her like I'd be there for her, like if she needed anything, because they're in a class together, and that's when she brought it up because we were talking about it and in our class, and like we weren't really concerned, but she brought up to me like she was like she had greatest concern for it because it really impacted her
mm,
directly. And that's when I was just like, it's it's already real, and it'll
mm-hmm.
keep getting real. And
Yeah.
it's just how we'll be there for each other this when it's here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like it's interesting like how like at the beginning of the year you kind of hear about COVID, like you heard about it like in Asia, you know, and like China, and then you hear like it spread to different countries like South Korea and then like France and then Italy, and so it still seemed pretty distant. But then as the weeks went on, even in middle of February, like I went to New Zealand and they had asked us like, have you been to China in the last 14 days? I'm like, no. And then so it's still kind of like distant. And then I think probably like the week after spring break that we had at the University of Arizona, I think that's when I started to feel it a little bit more, when it was starting to hit the tribal nations. So then that's when it was like, whoa, this is like a lot closer to home. But
Mm-hmm.
the New Mexico governor said something like that this disease has the potential to wipe out like tribal nations and communities. And so my sister and I were talking about that yesterday, and I was like, that's kind of crazy to think about. Like, I mean, I don't want to like so much into that, like emotion into that, because I really believe that that's not going to be the case, you know, but it is a really challenging comment to digest, I'd say, you know, because our communities are all community oriented. Like they're close proximity, you know, that's how the
Mm-hmm.
structure is set up to compare to other tribes that are maybe more nomadic and kind of spread apart, you know, but our communities are so condensed. So I
Mm-hmm.
think about that a lot too.
Yeah, and I remember when that was made, and like my first comment that came to mind when I saw that headline, I was just like, well, help us. Like, if you don't want to see us wiped out, help us with like funding, resources, advocate for us. Like, I know at least on my personal level, like contacting like our elected officials, be like, hey, help us, like, whatever resources you can find, because like we need help. Like there's already stories of these big, massive, like high end hospitals that are lacking funding and resources already. And once it's more, I hope it doesn't go there, but once it's more prevalent on tribal nations, like where will we be
Hmm.
once that happens? Like we barely have any funding as it is, barely have any resources, and but how would it look like when it comes here?
Hmm.
So
So, what do you think our future will look like based on how you're perceiving everything and like processing everything?
I think it's gonna change like dramatically, because when I first heard of COVID-19, I was in school like week before spring break, or like 2 weeks before spring break. That's when I started looking at it closely, and they're like the most vulnerable populations to contract COVID that will be at most risk are like the older populations and people with pre diagnosed or something conditions, and then the really are the small babies. And so I was just like, that leaves us like in the middle, like our generations. And if like it does impact these two communities or three communities larger, and they do, there's going to be a huge, or well, there's like, you can see Italy, for example, there's already a huge population lost, a lost generation. So there would be a lot of things lost within those generations that weren't relayed when they needed to. And there's going to be a resurgence of the younger generations being able to take over for like things that are lost. And we have to step up to the plate. And that's what's kind of scary. Like you think in our wider government, like the people that are in power or have some sort of control at least, um, like they're older, the older generation. And I hope that like the people that I know I look up to, they're safe and protected. At the same time, like that's who's most at risk and who we have to take care of. And if that doesn't, work, we'd be the ones to step up and step in and fill those positions. So like that's what's gearing up to that point, at least like how we react to it, and how do we be there for our communities, and how do we support those who've like been affected, and like moving forward. Like I was talking to my friend yesterday, and how long like the quarantine will last, at least in the US.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say at least till summer, because like our political structure isn't designed to go on lockdown like tomorrow.
Hmm.
It's um it's democratic, so it'd be up for debate for a while, and if people still aren't listening, it's going to be up for debate longer, and it's just going to be a process, just like a democratic system. So I feel like the countries that will like have more control, like more development over the like just the side effects or the effects that COVID-19 has, like China, like their the way that they run their country is very authoritative. So that's why they were able to shut down and control this disease
Hmm.
faster.
Hmm.
Whereas like us, the US, we have different sort of rights and limitations to our powers. And that
Hmm.
just take us a while to even get stuff done. Like
Hmm.
even with this the CARES Act, I think it's called, that was
Hmm.
passed. Like it took a while to even think about it, how
Hmm.
it's gonna be drafted and how is it gonna be passed. Like there's people even debating that, and so it's just going to take a while. It's going to
Hmm.
affect us, like it's already affecting us, like the economic standards, and like the white people's perception of things. And now um I think it's going to really impact our tribal communities, and really see the times and how we can like assert our sovereignty and our status.
Hmm.
And like one of the big cases I'm thinking about is Navajo Nation. Like they've been on top of things, like they've asserted their status, they've implemented a stay-at-home order, a curfew, and they're really caring for their people, and how like even the stores are putting that message out to people too.
Hmm.
And it's just like seeing how different communities react to it and what they're doing about it is also really, really good to see, and how that's going to shape the future of like government stuff
Hmm.
and daily life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think as you were talking, I was just thinking about like all the students that are graduating this year, and like thinking about the generations, like, when you were born, probably like when the late 90s, and you came into like September 11th, you were probably a little girl, probably like 4 or something, and you maybe could remember like how our world changed after that. And then now, what, 19 years later, we have this like pandemic happening. So I
Mm-hmm.
think about all like the native students that who are like first generation, or like maybe low income, or like just have overcome all these challenges to graduate this year, and then everything is just like changed. Like you won't have that graduation ceremony in May, like you won't have those ceremonies that are put on by the native student centers, like where you're there and your whole family and your community's there, and they drive hours on end to get there. And I think about that. I think about your class, like the high schoolers too, and your senior class of college, and like how I'm sure for many years that's what you've been dreaming about. It's like, okay, I'm gonna graduate. Like I already see like who I'm gonna invite, like what we're gonna do at home and like celebrate. But now it's like so different. That this generation misses out on that to some
Yeah.
extent. Like how does that make you feel as a graduating senior?
Mm. It makes me really sad. I'm not gonna lie, because when I was growing up, man, I used to watch those movies of like, oh, these people going to college, like getting accepted, going to study abroad, joining sororities, and all that stuff. And like I remember like watching these shows, and I grew up relatively hard. There was places or sometimes where I like TV was my only escape. So when I watched these shows, I'd be like in awe. I'd be like, wow, I want to be that person. I want to do those things. So from a very young age, and my grandparents also supported me getting an education. So I was like, all right, like I set that goal for myself early on. I'm gonna go to college, and so ever since I like maybe six, 5, 6, I set that goal for myself to go get into college. And so I've been working up my entire life to go to college and get a college education. And so when I finally got to college, I was like, this is it. Like I'm joining all these clubs, I'm doing all these things. I want to be the person that I wanted to be when I was younger. So I worked so hard in everything I did when I was in college to graduate, specifically in 4 years with 2 degrees. And in my final semester, I was just like, wow, I'm doing it. I'm almost done. And like seeing your life change right before your eyes, due to like COVID-19, like you never, well, I never imagined this. And I was just like, this is crazy. It's wild. And once like the school started closing or transitioning online, I was just like, okay, like hopefully there's still that hope of like going into ceremony or like the convocations and stuff like that. And but then it went to like seeing a U of A going like canceling their commencement. Then it came to us cancel our commencement. And that before I left from spring break, I bought my graduation cap and gown. And I was just like, I hope it's still gonna go, because this is something I've been working on. But then once we got that email saying it's been canceled, I was just like, this, it really hurts. Working for this my whole life and wanting like to be there, like with my, like everybody who supported me through this journey. Like it feels like like I don't know, like when you're so there, you're so close, and it just like gets taken underneath from you. But at the same time, I talk with my dad, and he's just like, sometimes there's things that happen and you don't have no control, and this is just one of those times. Like he gave it to me hard, and I was just like, I know, but I've been working so hard. But he's like, like there will be other times to be recognized. And with this new thing, it'll come, it'll go, and hope there'll be another time that you'll be recognized. And he said, just believe that and it'll happen. And I was just like, but still it hurts. And then I was just like, okay, like I understand where you're coming from though. Like, but just trying to find a new thing to look forward to. It's been challenging, but at the same time, it's a global pandemic. You never know what could happen next, and just cherish like the people at the time. And even me doing my online classes, I cherish that moment because I don't know what the next few weeks or even years are gonna look like, and if at least I'll have the opportunity to be like, I graduated with like 2 degrees from Zoom University or Carib University.
Yeah, it's like when you're talking, my mom would say like, with your education, no one can ever take it away from you. And as
Mm-hmm.
you were saying that, I was like, it's kind of switched a little bit. It's like no one or nothing can take that away from you. Because even though it is like, like what your dad said, like there'd be a time to celebrate. It's not right now, but at the end of the day, you have your education. Like no matter
Mm-hmm.
what happens, you're gonna get your degree, which is
Yeah.
like really cool, you know. Like when you think about it like that, and then the celebration. Once all this stuff clears, there's probably gonna be like this huge celebration of
Yeah.
everything. Nobody's gonna go to work, you know. Like we're just gonna go be outside and like I don't know. Get some ice cream and go to a movie or something, you know. I don't
Go watch the animals in live person.
know. At San Diego Zoo, you know. So yeah, I'm sure it's still hard though.
Yeah, but it's all cool. I remember getting U of A's or seeing U of A's email about like canceling commencement, and then I was like cleaning my room at the time. So and I found my graduation gown in my stove, and then so I was just like, it's gonna come for us too. So I put it on and I started playing Pomp and Circumstance, and I walked around the house, and my grandparents are just laughing at me. They're like, what don't you your own commencement if that happens? I was
Oh,
like,
your family and Julio.
I know. No dog.
You can put a little cap on Julio.
I gotta start
Yeah,
making it now.
I know. Shoot. Well, I know we can talk forever, and I'll probably talk to you again, and so we can talk more about this stuff. But I think this was just
And we talk
helpful.
about the penguins.
Yeah, how we were passing our time during breaks, or you know. But it's good. It's good. I mean, I haven't talked to you this much in ever, so we're talking every
I know it's like daily updates.
day. Yeah, pretty much. I'm like, oh, I have this thought, and or I had this idea.
I know.
So, all right, cool. Well, thank you for reflecting with me and processing.
Of
I
course, of course.
feel like this is like a talk show, and like in the 90s, they had like Sally Jesse Raphael, or they had like Mari Povich, they had like Oprah, you know, they're like, so tell me.
Bruh.
But
We should like have a couch set up and everything.
I know. I had to finally put a fake background on mine because like all my friends were walking back and forth.
I know
So
I saw on that other conference call they had like a blanket up or something.
I tried, and it like the partition wasn't even long enough. It was only like this big. Like
I know. I was gonna text you and be like, if you move your camera just a little bit, and then you get it correct.
oh man, I know. So well, we'll see what happens today, and we'll see what new things come up tomorrow. So as the world turns.
Mm, one day at a time,
I know.
one Zoom conference at a time.
I know. All right, cool. Well, I'm sure I'll talk to you later.
All right, we'll talk soon.
All right, that's the end of April 2nd, 3:05 Arizona time, 4:05 New Mexico time. All right, we'll talk to you later.
Okay.
All right, bye.